Parole, what victims are told, but what actually happens. My name is Sarah Rady. Most people know me as Mama Bear. In my first video, I explained presidential pardons, how a president can legally pardon almost anyone, and how that power affects victims. In my second video, I discussed state pardons, how governors and clemency boards can forgive state crimes, often without a victim's voice. Today's video is about parole. Parole is different from pardons, but for victims, it can be just as frightening, because parole is where victims are told they finally have rights and then learn how hard they are to use. Most people think parole is about rehabilitation. They say parole is about second chances. When people talk about second chances, they rarely stop to count how many chances already came before the one that killed someone. But as a mother who lost a child, I cannot ignore how many chances already came before the final one. I watch public officials speak out about offenders needing more time with their families. And as a victim, that framing is devastating, because it overlooks families who no longer have the option. I'm a mother whose son was killed by a drunk driver and didn't learn about parole from a brochure. I learned about living with the fear of it, and that's why I'm making this video. Parole is an early release from prison. It does not erase the conviction. It does not mean that the sentence is over. Parole means the person was convicted. The sentence still exists. The person may be released early with rules and supervision. A parole board usually makes parole decisions, not a judge and not a jury. What victims are told about parole is often presented to victims as participation, but what it really requires is endurance. Victims are often told, you'll be notified, you'll have a chance to speak, your voice matters. On paper, victims do have rights to be informed, to submit a statement, to participate. But what happens in real life is often very different. What victims aren't told is this: parole is not designed around us. The system automatically moves the offender forward with attorneys, deadlines, and clear instructions. Victims, on the other hand, are expected to find the process, understand it, and insert themselves into it, often while carrying unresolved trauma. Notification depends on registration. Participation depends on persistence. And being heard often depends on how much a victim is able or willing to fight. Victims often assume a liaison is automatically assigned, but many of us discover too late that no one is. Without a liaison, victims are left to navigate parole alone, while the offender is guided every step of the way. Victims still must fight for those rights to mean anything. Deadlines are short, instructions are unclear, information is hard to find. Victims are expected to relive the worst day of their lives, put it into a written statement, video, or email, and hope someone actually reads it. In some states, they rely on prior victim impact statements being forwarded. Meanwhile, the person who caused the harm moves through the system with lawyers, rules, and time on their side. The Department of Justice has stated that victims are supposed to be assigned a liaison after a trial or a plea deal. I only learned this by searching for answers myself. If I requested one as of today, I have not heard back. The system does not have to exclude victims to silence them. It only has to make participation difficult enough that many cannot endure it. Parole allows victims' participation, but it does not ensure victims' presence. You must be a mama bear and fight for your rights. Why parole is so frightening for victims. Parole means the person who caused the harm may be released back into the community. For victims, that doesn't mean closure, it means exposure. Victims are left wondering, will conditions actually be enforced? Will anyone truly monitor behavior? Will safety really come first? Or convenience. For victims who live in the same state or the same town, parole brings very real fears. The fear of running into the person who shattered your family, the fear of crossing paths with their friends or supporters, the fear of being recognized or targeted for simply surviving. This is not paranoia. It is a rational response to uncertainty. What makes parole frightening is not just the release. It's the lack of enforcement. In my case, I have reviewed court documents showing that restrictions were ordered in Dennis's earlier convictions. Yet there is no proof that those conditions were completed or enforced, and even ignored after my son was killed. There is no rational reason to believe they will suddenly be followed now. That history matters, because parole depends on supervision, compliance, and follow-through. And when those things fail before, victims are asked to accept risks without evidence that anything has changed. And I learned that DUI offenders, even in fatal cases, are often not classified as high risk or dangerous. The man who killed my son is up for parole in December 2026. That date is not a headline. It's a countdown. It is the knowledge that decisions may be made behind closed doors in a system where supervision has already proven fragile. Fear does not come from anger. It comes from experience. It comes from knowing how easy supervision can fail. It comes from the reality that once released is possible, the burden of safety quietly shifts back onto the victim. What comes next? In the coming months, I will be sharing real-time updates as I navigate the parole process, leading up to December 2026. I will show what actually happens, not what the system promises. So when the time comes, victims are informed, prepared, and no longer silenced by confusion. Please subscribe if you want the truth, not the brochure version of justice. Share this video with someone who thinks parole is simple or believes victims are always protected. And if you are a victim facing parole right now, you are not alone. This channel exists so victims don't have to walk this path by themselves. Thank you. I'm Sarah Rainey, Mama Bear.